Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 206 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is David Howe.
My name is Patrick Knisley.
And oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest for today's episode. The one and only Dylan Muss from the Geekverse podcast has rejoined the show. How's it going, Dylan?
Wow, I'm back for the third time, the Third Timers Club.
Oh, yeah.
With a badge, a jacket, anything.
Three gets a badge, 5 gets a jacket, 10 you ascend to heaven. Yes.
I don't think maybe I'll stay at 9 then. That'll be my last appearance.
But thank you very much for joining us, Dylan. We have you on today because we're going to be talking all about Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp for the Nintendo Switch family of systems. It's finally out after a long delay and the war in Ukraine continuing to rage on. The game has released regardless. It's out on the Switch. We're going to give you our impressions and our thoughts on the game so far, how it compares to the original GBA games, and all that kind of stuff in the main topic. And then before that, we also have a whole bunch of news that we're going to be going over. It's kind of a busy week in Nintendo. We got an Indie World that we didn't get to talk about last episode. A new Tears of the Kingdom commercial has released. Lots of Sega news, surprisingly. And then a little topic called Picross that we'll be talking a little bit about as well. We got some Picross news. Always a good day when we got some of that. But before we get into all that stuff, how are we doing today? How are our weeks this past week?
I'll go. It's been generally pretty good. This weekend was a bit of a blur. My child got really sick and stomach bug, and so stayed home from school today and that sort of thing. So the last few days are a little messy and blurry, but he's better.
Cool. Glad to hear it.
Otherwise, things have been fine.
Nice.
I don't even know.
Yeah. How are you feeling? Did you get whatever he had?
No. I mean, not
good
yet.
For you.
I don't think I will. I mean, I have a pretty good immune system.
That's what we always call you, Iron Tummy Patrick.
Actually, I kind of do have especially with like stomach stuff. Like
behind your back, we just call you the human garbage disposal.
I kind of am. Like I ate after him a little bit, even like just like test myself. You know what I mean? Like my wife was like, just put that in the compost. I'm like,
I think you mean my tum tum.
What did I walk into over
here? Yeah. The podcast has changed since you were on here last, buddy.
You guys both did say, without planning this, when you came into the lobby, you're like, coming in a little hot today. So I don't know what that was.
Welcome to Super Tum Tum Heads.
I liked it though.
I'm having a pretty good time. I had a great weekend, actually. It was super chill. I saw 2 movies in cinemas this weekend. I saw Suzume on Saturday, which was excellent. It's the new Shinkai anime, the same director of Your Name. A really excellent movie. I think it'll be out on Crunchyroll soon, but man, I'd really recommend going out and checking that out in theaters while it's out there. It's a beautiful, beautiful movie. It's nice to watch animation on the big screen. You know what I mean? Especially when it's like top class animation. So that was fun. And then I saw Beau is Afraid on Sunday, which I don't know that I could really wholeheartedly recommend to most people. But I enjoyed it. It's like a 3-hour kind of journey, kind of an epic quest inside the mind of a very anxious man. Worth checking out if you're into weirdo shit. But definitely 2 very different films I saw in theaters this weekend. But other than that, having a good time.
I also saw 2 movies, one of which Beau is Afraid as well. And that it's hard to even call it a movie. It's just an odyssey of
odyssey
trippiness and weirdness. It's incredibly bizarre, but I had a great time with it. And then my second movie was Evil Dead Rise, though I didn't see that same one as you. So that was also a pretty good if you're into those Evil Dead movies, which are also very strange. So kind of a demented week in the theater for me, I guess, between those 2.
Yeah, all right. I feel like that would be a better double feature than the one that I did. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. And then, this weekend I kind of had a cold, so I really did nothing else but just stay at home and played a bunch of Advance Wars and all that, and feeling mostly back to normal today. So it's been a kind of hectic week, but a good one nonetheless.
Hell yeah. Glad to hear it.
Yeah, I'm glad you're feeling better.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do some shout outs then. Last week, we talked about Tears of the Kingdom. We're getting so close to that game. It would be fun to talk about it. we got a lot of great discussion in the Discord. It's hard to get into all of it. Swamp Cat, Cena, Ty Typos, Carosetta, DCD, The Huge, all chimed in. We all talked about, speculating on what the things in the trailer are and whether there's this and that sort of thing. Over on Instagram, Sprowlix said, we nailed it on speculation. Thank you for that. And speculated themselves a little bit about maybe the Zonai are evil or influenced by Ganondorf. And another +1 for the Zelda is forced away or taken away to the past or future or another dimension. And then over on the YouTube, when we were talking about jazz, Corduroy, who does our music, made a comment that he feels that 24/7 lo-fi radio is the soft jazz of our generation.
That's true. Yeah, it's like smooth jazz. You know what we have to thank for that is I think Samurai Champloo, the anime. You ever seen Samurai Champloo? It's by the same creator as Cowboy Bebop, and the soundtrack is all like kind of jazzy lo-fi hip hop, and it's definitely like ever since that came out, it's just been like everybody's been super addicted to that stuff. But he's totally right. Also, shout out to Corduroy, man.
So if you want to be shouted out, definitely send us a note on anything that we say that you have a thought on. Come join the Discord, be part of the conversation there. Share the podcast somewhere online, leave us a review, that sort of thing. We appreciate it. And then also hop on over to our YouTube if you're not watching there and give us a like and a subscribe. We'd appreciate that as well. And with that, we'll move into the news and rumors. We've got a lot. So we're starting off with, like David said, that Indie World happened right after we recorded. So it's a little bit old now in this fast-paced world we live in. April 19th, I think it was. There was a Indie World presentation. I don't know. What did y'all think? I mean, like a lot of cat games or lots of cats.
Yeah, I think there were like 3 cat games.
And some of them weren't necessarily cat games, but like cats were featured in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in the title.
One of them's like a board game, but then you like control a cat who like moves around the board. It's like, I don't really know what the cat has to do with this other than
Calico
being a cute element of it, I guess.
Well, that's actually like a real life board game, right? And I think this is just like the video game version and
Quilts
kind of
and
the
Cats
idea
of
of it.
Calico, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Quilts and Cats of Calico. That's right. And it's just about like making a comfy quilt for your kitty friend. Seems
great.
Seems really cool. And you can customize your own kitty, which is fun.
I'll just go. I thought there was a lot of good stuff in this. These indie worlds, honestly, they very rarely disappoint. Like not everything's for me. And there's so many games, it's hard to give attention to all of them. But like a lot of interesting stuff, I thought. Whether it's for me, points I want to make. Donkey, getting in on an indie world. This wasn't the first time we've heard of Big Mode's first game. That's his publishing company, called Animal Well, but it was first time we've seen it in a Nintendo presentation where he's hopping around in a creek in the back, being weird.
That's kind of a gorgeous looking game. I love the aesthetic of that.
I agree.
Like super dark with like scan lines and really low poly, or not low poly, very pixel art characters. I really like the minimalist look of that. A couple others that stood out to me. Rift of the Necrodancer looks awesome.
That was like up your alley for sure.
Yeah, totally. Well, because I've always loved Crypt of the Necrodancer, like in theory. You know what I mean? Like I love the idea of that game, but something about it has always kind of not clicked in my head as I've played it. And game never really quite clicked for me. This looks way more up my alley. It looks like kind of a combination of like Guitar Hero or Frequency or like Amplitude, which were old PlayStation games that were Harmonix games before they made Guitar Hero. So it's kind of that style plus a little bit of Rhythm Heaven in there as well. So that was really exciting to me. For some reason, Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon totally passed me by when it came out like last year. Now they've got this like free DLC for it. And I think they're doing like 3 or 4 more rounds of free DLC. And I'm looking at this game. I think it's half off right now. And I'm really tempted to pick that up because it looks right up my alley. Couple other ones that looked really good too. But any of you guys have any takeaways?
Well, I saw that Rift the Necrodancer as well. I think I had a similar experience to you, David, and I remember just one of my friends was really into it, and it was a great game to watch him play. But then when I was holding the controller, I could never like get it down in the same way. But that game, there's Crypt of the Necrodancer, and then Cadence of Hyrule. Do you think there's any way that they would take this Rift of the Necrodancer and make like a Zelda equivalent for that? That'd be
Dude.
kind of like Zelda Guitar Hero.
I mean,
That
if it's
sounds
like
amazing.
I feel like there's a lot of that in Zelda games. Like you play instruments in a lot of Zelda games.
Very
you know,
true.
so
Yeah.
that'd be a cool like DLC for this, for sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
The ocarina version.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be awesome. And then, yeah, I that Tesla grad, there was like a remaster, I guess, of the first one, and then this new one, the second one, and then like I guess a bundle of the two. And I'd never heard of these games before, but I thought the art style was quite nice, and just the way the developers were talking about it kind of got my attention too. So that was one I'd never heard of the first one, but now I threw them on my wish list, and maybe rainy day pick them up, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I think, yeah, for me too, that it was in the very end, like in that quick montage sequence, but Chants of Sennar, I think is called. It kind of has that Sable sort of aesthetic to it, and it looks it's not a third person sort of game, but more of a top down, but looked kind of weird and trippy, has that great art style. There's some weird puzzles and whatnot. So that one stood out to me as well, though. I'd have to see more about like what the actual gameplay loop is, but definitely, at least aesthetically, was capturing me.
Hell yeah. Yeah, definitely. I can give a shout out to Tesla Grad. I think I played that on the Wii U. It was either the Wii U or the 3DS, the original. But that's an awesome game. I'm really excited for the sequel as well.
Real quickly, I did want to mention Crime O'Clock. There's a board game. I think it's called something like Micro Macro. Or we have it here and we play it sometimes. That looks just like this game. But honestly, it should be a video game. It makes so much more sense as a video game. Like playing the board game version of it, like you have this gigantic map that takes up our whole kitchen table, and everything's so tiny. It comes with a little magnifying glass that whenever my wife and I play it, like our eyes are strained, and have like we can only do a little bit at a time. And like, it's one map, so you look across it, and there are different things happening sort of simultaneously as you solve these things. But it's like when I saw this, I'm like, yes, somebody should steal that idea.
Yeah, it's gorgeous
turn it
too.
into a video game. Makes much more sense.
It's got that like Wimmel style. It's got that isometric kind of style where it's like really busy and there's lots of stuff going on.
That's what the board game that I'm talking about is. It's exactly like it. Like that's where I'm like, these people probably just were like, ooh, what if we took that? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe they had a simultaneous idea.
Maybe it's the same fucking people.
That's
Who
possible
knows?
too. Yeah.
We should do our research.
Yeah, I probably should before I start accusing people of stealing things. Oh boy. And then I have also like Little Kitty in the Big City. Looks like some untitled Goose Game fun to me. Potentially at least. Like it was in the little like blast like 6 games, kind of like what you were talking about that other game, Dylan.
The sizzle reel. Yeah,
the sizzle reel. That's the word. But then I watched the full trailer for it, and I was like, this actually could be fun if it's done well.
Oh,
so, yeah. And there's an indie sale that's going on simultaneous with this. But honestly, unless you're listening to this in a very timely fashion, you might have missed it. So if it ends, I think, the evening this podcast comes out, like in the middle of the night. So
yeah, just pick up all these games at full price. Indie developers need to eat.
Oh boy. And then moving on to a game that is decidedly not an indie game, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which we talked about last week. It had a commercial come out. This was kind of leaked, right? Like footage of this that came out early, right?
Yeah, I think the like 30-second version of this spot leaked earlier because this definitely has more in it. But it's a lot of the same footage that was in the last one. I forget exactly like what they called this one, but it's basically like really showing off how creative the players can be in this world, right? It's like really trying to show that kind of like, Minecraft is like really popular in Japan, and I think that was a huge inspiration for this
really
game.
Everywhere.
Yeah, it's popular everywhere, but like especially with kids in Japan. And so I think like they really tried to put a lot of the customization elements of stuff like that into this game. There's a lot of building, a lot of like creativity and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a really cool spot. And I love that it shows somebody playing on their Switch in the laundromat while they're waiting for their clothes to dry, because I do that all the time. And I felt very seen by this commercial when the woman like playing like stands up and cheers and it's like, oops, I'm in a laundromat, and then sits down. It's a great commercial. Yeah, excited for it.
Yeah, the one little piece of gameplay that I at least hadn't seen before that stood out to me was Link cruising through one of these caves that we've seen a bit of this now, and the more and more I see this game, the more it seems like obviously they've done this overworld before, so how are they reinventing it? Adding a bunch of shit in the sky and then caves down below. And so it seems like the caves is going to be more mechanically intensive. He was shooting lights onto the walls, and that looked really interesting. So I'm very excited for that part of the game, because I think that could also be a bit scary too, which sometimes some of those older Zelda games, like, they have some scariness to them, or at least maybe I was just a kid and I was scared of things. But those sequences,
spooky.
Yeah, those sequences seem pretty interesting. So I'm pretty excited for that.
Hell yeah.
Nice. Well, then we'll move on, since we got a lot to cover. The Mario movie, the juggernaut that is the Mario movie, keeps moving on. And unsurprisingly, there's been a little bit of a tease for either sequels or other Nintendo movies, in that the Japanese publication Nikkei had at least some words from Miyamoto. I haven't, it was in Japanese. So there's been like translations done by Nintendo outlets here in the States that in particular was the thing about, there are other possible ways we can go. The idea, I think the general idea of like, there's a lot of ways we can go now, is the statement that's being passed around in English, at least. What do you think that means? A definite sequel, definite other franchises. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is not any kind of surprise whatsoever, but it's pretty much a soft confirm that Nintendo are working on more movies going forward. They're happy with the success of this. It very much sounds like using characters that would be fit for movies, or very well-known characters, not really referring to like Mario characters in and of themselves, just Nintendo characters, right? He said Nintendo is like a talent agency. We have plenty of other entertainers. Like it just really sounds like they've got big plans now for other stuff beyond just Mario, and that's really, really exciting to me. I hope we get some announcements really soon about some stuff that they're working on.
And the Mario movie is just making tons of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's going to be $1 billion movie. I don't know if that's happened yet, right? Maybe it has, but we don't know.
This week, it's meant to pass $1 billion. But again, it still has not opened in Japan. That's happening at the end of this week. And that's going to be huge.
I did not realize that. That's crazy that it's hit the numbers that it has without that.
Yeah.
I was concerned that, they announced that it's going to streaming very soon. I was like, you should let this thing like just cook in the theaters. But the fact that it hasn't even hit Japan yet is actually a pretty big deal too. So I don't think at this rate, then it seems like they'll have any issue hitting $1 billion, which is just crazy. I mean, every weekend it's like, oh yeah, this is the like record for the least drop off of an animated movie or something, right? So it's like, I don't know why they'd put it to streaming, but I don't know if that'll even stop them at this point.
Yeah, I think right now I'm on Box Office Mojo. It's sitting worldwide at 875 million worldwide. That's after 3 weeks. There are still markets that it's opening up in this weekend. So I think definitely by the end of this week, we're going to be hearing news stories about the 1 billion being crossed.
Anything else on the movie? I feel like there's always a lot on the Mario movie the last few weeks.
We'll keep checking in as the weeks go on this thing. Yeah, it's exciting to watch those numbers tick up.
Yeah, very much so.
Well, moving on to Xenoblade Chronicles 3, then the story DLC, which the name of which escapes me now. I should have made a good note on that. Is out. Like by now that the time before this podcast even comes out, like, which is kind of crazy because I think they said this was going to come out like I don't even remember if it was the end of the year or if it was like by the end of the summer or sometime much later in the year. This was their deadline, and all things Xenoblade 3, it seems like it's early.
Future Redeemed, by the way.
Thank you.
Is what
Future
it's called.
Redeemed.
Yeah.
And they've been posting some teasers about it and stuff too, but also just like, here it is, kind of not even like it's coming out in a week or two. It's like it's coming out in a few days. And so
someone's pumping like Adderall into the water at Monolith Soft or something.
Or they just had like a good estimate or something, or they were like safe. Their producer is like doing the right thing by saying, not over promising, or under promising and over delivering, right?
Well, they're just making the rest of Nintendo look bad. It's like they put out stuff so goddamn fast, and it's always so like feature complete and really polished and shit. It's really impressive what they're able to do at Monolith Soft. No wonder they roped him in.
It's also not too soon with like Fire Emblem Engage, where it's like this DLC is coming out suspiciously early. This is still like, okay, the game came out like what, good 8-9 months ago at
Yeah,
this point.
September. I
That's
think,
true.
something like that.
Yeah.
But earlier than they said, which is cool
Mhm.
for fans. Unless, you're like, it's all of a sudden hits you. But
Watch them drop Tears of the Kingdom DLC like a week after release.
I kind of wouldn't be surprised.
With New Game Plus, like just basic features.
Yeah,
They haven't
exactly, yeah.
mentioned it yet. Okay, that's all the discussion we should say.
Yeah. We'll save that for the next
10
Tears of the
new
Kingdom
caves,
episode we do
5
before
new
it comes out.
islands, Sky Islands. Yeah.
But before we move on from Xenoblade, there's some amiibo news. The Pyra and Mithra double pack is set to come out in July. I think it's July 21st. And they announced there were going to be some amiibos for Xenoblade Chronicles 3 of Noah and Mia. I hope I'm saying those names right. I have to be. I have not played it because they're simple names, but it's Xenoblade.
Where's Matt when we need him?
Right. It's a little weird that amiibos are so behind schedule, but I'm guessing that's production stuff because that's kind of strange. There's no date for the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 amiibo. They must be having some issues with making these things, but they also they make them in small batches and people buy them. So I don't think it matters, to Nintendo.
I'm kind of excited about this. I didn't even play Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and I want to pick up this Pyra and Mithra amiibo set. They look really good, and I really like them in Smash.
Yeah.
They're some of my favorite DLC fighters, so I'm kind of waiting for that to go up. I think GameStop had pre-orders, and Best Buy pre-orders haven't happened yet, but I'm kind of on the lookout for that.
Did they have like a Smash edition one for that character when they joined Smash?
That's
or
what
is
this
this
is.
That's what the Pyra and Mithra
That
amiibos.
is crazy. That is a long time past.
Dude, they're still.
Characters.
And then you have, what's after them? At least
Sora, right?
Steve too. I don't know.
No, Steve is out.
Steve is out. Okay, so is it just Sora that's after them?
I think
Kazuya was he
Kazuya
afterwards?
and
Kazuya was already released.
I don't know. Maybe it is. We are not on top of this. As big of a Smash fan as I am, I feel like I should remember, but I don't.
It's okay.
They probably should have expedited the Steve one. You'd think that would be make them a lot of money. But
I think I'm like pretty sure the Steve amiibo is out.
Is it?
Yeah.
Anyway, we should move on. You can...
For any Xenoblade questions, page Matt.
Sorry that we didn't have better knowledge of amiibo releases and Xenoblade.
Yeah, I mean you can buy the they released the Steve amiibo in like September of last year. Yeah.
All right. Well, moving on then. We've got some Sega news here.
All right, this is what we know about. All right, we're super Sega heads.
Is it? Okay, first up, some new Genesis games have been added to the NSO app. I don't really know, a lot about these. These are names. Actually, that's not true. These are games I've heard of, right? Like Kid Chameleon, Flicky, I've heard of. Not so much Pulse Man. And then there's
Pulse Man is lit. Yeah, Pulse Man's a really cool game.
And then Street Fighter 2 Special Champion Edition. I don't know specifically which version of so many stupid versions of Street Fighter 2, but Pulse Man is good. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's a super fun, like weird platformer. A lot of like bouncing around walls mechanics. I feel like it's built on the same game engine as like Sonic the Hedgehog and what's that other game where you play the little star guy? But anyway,
Starfy.
Yeah, well, not Starfy, but yes. But yeah, it's a super cool platformer. Flicky is a really fun kind of arcade style game as well. This is a good drop. I'm looking forward to this.
Nice.
I jumped into Pulse Man as well. That was I had never played it back in the day or anything like that, but it is. Yeah, I agree with you. It plays really well. The movement feels really good. The visuals look great. I was almost surprised they didn't drop an epilepsy warning though in the trailer for this thing. It was insane.
There's a lot of
how
flashing.
over the top it was, but at least the first couple of levels when I was playing through it are actually pretty standard. For whatever reason, every building in the background of the game, it just says Sega on it. It was like a bit over the top for me, but I had fun jumping into a few levels there.
Also, fun fact, that's a Game Freak game. Early Game Freak game.
Right.
Pulseman.
Yeah.
Yep.
Really cool.
That's weird. Or is it? I don't know. Maybe not.
It's so weird.
So weird, man. What else we got for Sega? Knuckles. Knuckles is getting his own TV spin-off from the films. Idris Elba, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then bumbling policeman.
Yeah.
apparently is going to be a heavily
It's
featured
still
character.
doing live action for some godforsaken reason, but they're doing it.
So I guess it's going to be on Paramount Plus, and I don't know if there's a date for it yet or anything, but it's just at least been formally confirmed here.
Last I've heard, the release date is meant to be at the end of this year.
I don't know if there's anything to say about that. I am open-minded. The Sonic movies have been okay, so I'll check it out.
Paramount Plus doesn't have a great track record for video game adapted series. I think the Halo show was also on Paramount Plus, if I'm not mistaken, which was not that well received. But I think they're keeping that show going as well. But either way, I'll definitely check this out. I've got Paramount Plus, or I've got a friend's login for it anyway.
Yeah. We can watch it. And then maybe the biggest Sega news here is that SEGA of America has officially unionized. So like a couple of years ago, there were 0 unionized video game companies in America. Now we have a few. It's improvement. And I feel like that's the kind of thing that the more it happens, the more it will happen, right? Like momentum building on that front, which is, I think, good. So
yeah, it's great. No, it's super exciting. I mean, that you love to see, because it's up until this point, all the video game like unions and guilds that have been formed have been like bits of, like the QA testers from Activision or something like that.
Or
This
even
is just
not even all of Activision, just some like division of it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, this is SEGA of America. It's a super majority of 144 employees across a whole bunch of different divisions within SEGA of America. So that's really great to see. Hopefully that a lot of people follow suit. Also exciting day for my company, Powerhouse Animation. We organized today into a union, and we officially have sent something out to the NLRB. And so I think we're the first animation studio in Texas to do it. And it's there's only been a few outside of California that have done it. So it was really good day for unionization in the creative industries.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah. Apes together strong.
Yeah. In more good news for David, Picross. We got a new Picross game, David. Picross S9.
Yeah, this is the 12th official Picross game on the Nintendo Switch from Jupiter. Very exciting. There's not like a ton to say. I mean, it's Picross.
Come on. What's so big about
I'll say this. The one feature they've added this time is the ability to rewind. So like if you make a mistake, instead of like having to track down exactly where the fuck you went wrong, you can just rewind up until the point where you made a mistake.
Oh, it tells you where you made the mistake, or you have to
No. You can just kind of like, you can just roll back moves that you made. You know what I mean? So it's a really cool, I've been playing like hella fucking Picross lately. In fact, I've been playing like way too much Picross lately. I've been getting back into like IRL Picross. I've got a book of nanograms that I've been doing. And it's like, but I've been playing a lot of old Picross games, you know what I mean? Or like pen and paper with like 0 assist or whatever. So I'm getting like really good at that stuff. But then I go back and play these new games and it's like, like the quality of life stuff like makes it so snappy and speedy. And they're so addictive and so fun. And so of course I'm going to pick this up. I'm really excited for Picross S9.
David, because I find if I'm in a mode where I'm playing a bunch of Dr. Mario or something, I start to I'll close my eyes or I'll just see blocks falling and stuff. Do you just have, when you close your eyes or when you're going to sleep at night, do you just see the puzzles in your mind? You just tap
I don't even see you guys right here. I just see sequences of numbers. I see a pixelated version of Patrick's head. Yeah. That's like slowly coming into being throughout the course of this podcast.
And you're like, oh, there's an error on his eye. Let me, scratch that, rewind, put a new pixel there. Oh man.
Like Tetris effect or whatever it's called, right? Like
the Tetris effect. Yeah.
I used to have it with Street Fighter because I played so much Street Fighter when I was a kid, and I have it now a little bit with Splatoon, where as I'm falling asleep, I'll visualize swimming through ink and stuff. Like it's kind of a crazy phenomenon.
And I'm constantly painting my floors different colors. You know what I mean? And so it's really easy for me to fall into that trap as well.
Oh boy. All right. I don't know. There's a whole lot to say about this next one, but just wanted to mention it. PlayStation has acquired Firewalk. Firewalk is a relatively new video game studio that I don't think has actually put out a game yet, but a few years back was formed and got funding to make a game for I think Sony or for PlayStation, and now it is officially going under their wing.
It's a bunch of ex-Bungie guys, right?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
What I saw in this is that it seems like whatever they're making is, a multiplayer game or live service thing, that seems to be what they want the future of PlayStation to be is all, everything to be a live service game, a lot of multiplayer stuff. So this seems like a perfect pickup. They could probably do it pretty cheaply. And that's kind of what PlayStation does usually is like at least in the last few years, I feel like everyone they've been acquiring, like even Insomniac, they got for pretty cheap when you think about it in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
But I think it was like Haven Studio or something, and they seem to be picking up some more studios early on. And so maybe, they have that big connection with Bungie already. And perhaps this seemed like a very easy pickup and was probably quite cheap for them compared to the stuff that Microsoft's doing in terms of acquisitions.
No, you're totally right. They keep scooping up studios that have yet to create a game, but that have big name talent, right? And so you're right. It's really smart for the wallet. But it just sucks that they're probably setting a lot of these studios up to fail. They've got this thing that they're pushing where it's like, we're going to put out 10 live service games over the next few years. And it's like,
maybe
not all of those are going to, have to think that at least half of those are going to fail, so it's,
they just shut down Dreams, or they're shutting down Dreams. From, new updates. They just announced that. So, and that was from Media Molecule, not to mention something like Firewalk, who is kind of an unknown, right?
Right. Yeah. Totally.
Well, we'll see what game comes out of that down the line. Who knows when? But we'll move on to, for the last several years, we've been given little updates on this legal battle of sorts between Nintendo and Team Executor, who did some, they made, what was it, Switch ways to hack your Switch hardware that they would sell. Am I right about that? Every time this comes up, I get myself a little bit confused about what exactly they did, but essentially sold hardware that let you hack your Switch that had Nintendo IP on it or something, or I don't remember.
Yeah, and it had access to like pirate shops and stuff like that included in it, I believe. So it was like they were selling it, they were making money off of it, and then it was also like a direct beeline to pirated games. Yeah.
And Team Executor is like a group of I guess various hackers, as well as they ran this storefront selling this stuff. And one of the people who Nintendo went after is incidentally somebody named Gary Bowser, who has been in prison because of this, and is now getting out of prison thanks to good behavior. And
he was so good in there.
And the sort of sketchy, sad thing is that, the judgment against this guy is like in the millions of dollars. And so the headlines you're seeing are like, for the rest of this guy's life, he's going to have to pay money to Nintendo because they're going to be garnishing his wages until he dies, because they can, legally I think he's Canadian actually, but he was sentenced in America and all that. And because our legal system is super cruel, which is, I think we can blame Nintendo, but we can also blame the American justice system for being terrible. He's only certain, at least the good news is only some of his money can be taken, right? Like when you have, they can only garnish like 25 or
25 to 30% of his monthly gross income for the rest of his working life. So don't fuck with Nintendo, I guess.
Yeah. And maybe if we talk about this enough, Nintendo will cut the guy a break or something, because probably you just can't help but feel like, okay, the guy's been in prison. Sure, garnish his wages a little bit, maybe, though I don't think you need to, because you're making enough money. But the point feels like it's been made.
It's fucked up too, because Nintendo's making billions off of a character that they ripped off from this guy's name. They've got a fucking Billboard 100 hit song with somebody named after this poor man's last name.
Yeah.
It's just hypocrisy.
Yep. So I don't know, I feel like I read in the comments some people who are like, oh, you can't pay the price don't do the crime, and to some extent, like maybe, but also we live in a very cruelly harsh justice system, which is, I think, the fact that mega corporations can get gigantic judgments against people who him individually. I don't know that he made that much money off of this. You know what I mean? Like that feels like that should be the limit of money you can get back. You know what I mean? Not like how much. I don't know.
Yeah. I just really hope Nintendo doesn't crack down on me selling Switch games out of the back of my car. Because I got copies, baby. Come get me, Nintendo. I fucking dare you.
Like a reselling?
Doesn't matter. I film.
How much money are you making on the reselling?
I film games with my. It's like cam rips of games that I sell out of the back of my car. Yeah. Anyway, that joke didn't really land the way I wanted it to. It's fine.
Worked for me. Yeah, it's cool. It's good for me to know that I'm not safe just being over the border here in Canada. I still can't fuck with Nintendo, as
you could be
punished
deported
just the same, so
to the harsher legal system. Yeah,
and then all my money will be taken for the rest of my life. So
yeah,
I'll lay off. I'll leave Nintendo alone on this one.
Definitely. Well, that's it for most of the news. I guess we can just mention, of course, what we're going to be talking about in our main subject, which is that Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp is out. We're going to talk all about it after the break. I don't know if we want to talk about like maybe just like that it's doing pretty decently well with the critics and scoring and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's got a Metascore of 82 right now, which is good. There's more 10 out of 10s and 9 out of 10s than I was expecting. To be honest, from reviews, but it's a great game. I played these games when I was a kid, and seems like they just did the game again, but on the Switch. So of course they were going to have pretty good scores.
Well, we'll save any discussion about it for the main topic then. And what we'll do now is we'll take just a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk all about Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. All right. Well, we are back, and this week we're talking about Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp, the remake. Is it a remake technically?
I'd say so. Yeah. It's got some like balance changes. It's got a complete graphic overhaul, voice acting. I definitely call this a remake. Yeah.
Games just launched on the Switch. So what? These two games came out 20 years ago or so.
Mm-hmm. I think the first game came out in the US September 10th, 2001.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So they've always kind of been cursed a little bit, this game series, with release date stuff. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, a little over 20 years for the first one. It's kind of interesting to see these games come back now. I don't know how y'all feel about that, because what this series has been kind of in hiatus, right? It was kind of like Fire Emblem in a way. Like the first Fire Emblem game that we got in the West was a Game Boy Advance game, but that was not the first Fire Emblem game by a long shot. You know what I mean? There were a lot of Wars games before this in Japan, right? There was Famicom Wars, Super Famicom Wars, and other games like that. Leading up to this, Advance Wars was just the Game Boy Advance version of it, right? And then after this as well, there were more games. There was
Battalion?
Yeah, Battalion Wars for the Wii. I think it was on the Wii.
One of them was on the GameCube, and one of them was on the Wii. I only know because I'm looking right now.
Yeah. And then there was Advance Wars Dual Strike for the DS and a couple other games in the series. But Advance Wars and Black Hole Rising for the Game Boy Advance were definitely kind of the most world-renowned games in the series.
It's funny that because they had Game Boy Wars, I think was just what the game was called, which is kind of a weird name in retrospect. And like Advance Wars definitely sounds the best, even though there's all those different iterations. But it is funny that there was the two versions on DS. But they're like, you know what, we're gonna stick with that name because it's better than DS Wars, which is not a very catchy name.
At least they got Dual Strike in there, right? Like that was like Dawn of Sorrow. They did that for a lot of games, so they just put DS somewhere in there.
Yeah, that's funny because like it's the Wars series, right? Like at least that's how it's known in America, because like the Game Boy Wars, Super Famicom Wars, and stuff like that, right? Like
they need to bring that to NSO and make that bring the English dialogue in there, I would love to go back and check those games out. That'd be so
Yeah.
cool.
Well, that's kind of something that I think that's part of the reason that the Game Boy Advance games, Advance Wars 1 and 2, are so good, is that they had time to iterate. And like by the time Advance Wars came out, it was like, holy shit, what are these games here in the West? We're like, these are amazing, like so fully featured and all this quality of life stuff. But they had many versions before this to get the formula just right. And then they just stuck with the title. It's kind of like Final Fantasy 3 was Final Fantasy 6. You know what I mean? They were just like, people in the West know it as Advance Wars. Let's just call it that.
And then this game was obviously delayed and took a little while to get to us, but we've got it now. How did you feel about this game so far with the time? And, it only came out on Friday, but how's everybody feeling? Are they enjoying this game? What's the overall thoughts? Dylan?
Yeah. Well, I want to quickly say too, like this game getting delayed, I was kind of uncertain if I was going to pick it up originally. And honestly, it was just the price point. Like I felt like 2 Game Boy Advance games, like I do love Game Boy Advance, but that just feels kind of pricey. And what changed in the year delay was that now the vouchers exist, and it actually made that a more palatable price. And I think that's ultimately why I ended up picking it up at launch. Maybe I would have waited for a sale, which probably would have only been that same amount anyway, right? 15,
I think
20%.
we all technically used vouchers to play this game. Yeah, I did,
especially
it as well.
with how close it is to Tears of the Kingdom. It just kind of made sense as a nice 1-2 punch for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people. So yeah, Advance Wars is I've played so many tactics games in my life. I love Fire Emblem. Played every one of those games that's been released in North America. Triangle Strategy, Midnight Suns are 2 of my favorite games from last year. But I've never played Advance Wars, so it's been fun to come and check out this new tactics game. But I did play a ton of Wargroove when that came out in 2018,
Right.
that indie game, which just like 1-to-1 rips off what Advance Wars is. So this does feel very familiar in terms of just the kind of tactics game it is, in terms of having these units that are not necessarily named, and you're going to drop units, you can combine them, and different mechanics like this. So it does feel very familiar, even if I haven't played the actual series, and I'm really enjoying it so far. It's one of my favorite genres, and this is such a different formula within that genre. So even though I've played a bit of Wargroove, this still feels very fresh, and really enjoying it so far.
Totally. Yeah, I'm enjoying it too. I like that it feels... I think there's more than enough space for both Fire Emblem and Advance Wars to exist in the Nintendo canon, right? They feel very, very different to play, right? I mean, obviously, Advance Wars is a lot more kind of compressed, the battlefields, right? They're not quite as like expansive necessarily. I mean, there are some definitely bigger maps in the game, especially as you get further, but it's like, kind of by design, it's a little bit more compressed, but it feels a lot more complicated in a lot of ways. Like there's more to keep track of. It's not as like easily laid out as Fire Emblem. And to me, it really feels a lot more like chess, where like each kind of unit has its own, distance it can travel, different kinds of, other units that it's better against than other units, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. There's a lot more like, I feel like I can brute force Fire Emblem fights way more than I can Advance Wars fights. Like you really need to hold some guys back to guard your base, or, when you inevitably lose guys at the front lines, having like a second row to take, the guys out that are a little weakened from the guys that you had out at the front before, right? So it's a lot more like tactically taught, I think. And to me as well, I think the like aesthetic of it, like I loved... I didn't play a ton of these games when I was a kid, but I did play the first Advance Wars on GBA like a good bit. And it's like, I always loved that kind of the like super crunched pixel look, right? And I think the kind of toyetic kind of tabletop simulation style that they went with, at first I wasn't sure if I'd like it, but I really do like it. And I think it looks really great in handheld. I'm just really enjoying the game so far. It's challenging, dude. It doesn't really hold your hand, even though there's a lot of tutorials.
Yeah. I'm probably the least enthused of the 3 of us about this game, though I'm kind of coming around the more time I spend on it. I think everything you just said, David, I would echo. Number one, like I'm the opposite of Dylan. I am not a tactics, grid, strategy game player. I am a run into the fray and attack person, and that does not work in this game. Which I know, and so but I still like it's just my innate like, even though I know that, I still kind of do it.
Yo, me too, Doug. Yeah,
you did.
I don't know if
better
you
than
saw
me.
on my.
Like, I watched.
I was streaming some on Sunday. It was like
very
I
similar
did
to my
that.
experience.
Yeah. I like did that and then spent the entire rest of the match like with 2 units,
like
just like barely getting by until I beat it. Yeah.
I think like it's hard to not compare this to Fire Emblem, which I do like. And I think I like Fire Emblem more than this series because of the trappings of it, right? Like I'm more into fantasy fighting than I am into war simulation fighting. And I'm a little weird about war simulation fighting too. Like and there's like seeing these characters with guns and stuff just feels a little weird to me. Even though it is
that's
like
why they delayed it,
right? And even though, like you said, it's kind of got the box around it, makes it feel like you're playing a war game on a tabletop, which also doesn't really appeal to me. And I think in Fire Emblem, you have the characters, right? Your units are your characters and you get a little bit attached to them. Whereas in this game, the characters are the commanding officers. And like, I kind of am starting to like the commanding officers. And maybe that's where I'm coming around to playing a little bit more. Also, I'm a little overwhelmed by it. Like, and is it Nell? Is that her name? Nell makes me feel bad every time I like ask for help. I don't know if y'all have noticed that, but like she'll be like, "Do you need me to explain this again?" And I'll be like, "Yes." And she'll be like, "Ugh," or like, like literally, there's voice acting that goes, "Ugh," when you do something wrong in the tutorial stuff. Like if you click on the wrong spot, because she's like, select this unit, and I'm like, okay, and I accidentally hit A. She's like, "Ugh," and I'm like, "Geez, Nell, I'm trying to learn your game."
That's funny. Yeah, I mean the character, the kind of like main character that you play as, like, is
Andy.
Like the characterization is like, yeah, Andy is kind of like written to be this like impatient child, basically, that like is constantly like going forth.
That's me.
You know what I mean? And so yeah, so it's very much like playing with that characterization. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely, there's a lot to learn at the beginning, and it's hard to keep it all in your head.
And I think like what you were saying, there's more here than Fire Emblem, right? Like, you have to think about fuel, you have to think about ammo, you have to think about different units that attack different units differently. Some units I still am like, why can't I attack with this guy? Oh, it's only anti-aircraft or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's why the more I play it, the better I feel a little bit acclimated to it. And I'm coming around, but it also feels a little anachronistic to me, the war stuff with the cartoony stuff, in a way that doesn't work super well for me. Cause it's like, I don't like war, but I like the art, and I'm feeling a little weird about it. That said, again, I am coming around on it, and the more I've pushed through, the more I've enjoyed it, though it is hard and I'm on casual. But I think once I learn, maybe I'll do better. I don't know. Go ahead.
I like what you're talking about in terms of why you're maybe bouncing off this and then you prefer what's going on with Fire Emblem. I think one thing that a lot of people would enjoy with this over Fire Emblem is just that modern Fire Emblem, it feels like very much 50% of the time you are doing RPG stuff, you're talking to people, you're leveling up your character, you're going to the arena, you're walking around the Somnial or the monastery, whatever it is, and then 50% of the time you're in the battles doing tactics. Triangle strategy. I know a lot of people really bounced off that game because there's so much story. I loved every second of that.
A lot of dialogue, yeah.
But this game is 98% battles and then tiny percent of anything else. And I think for a lot of people that's really good. And for me too, I don't know. Sometimes I can get burnt out on some of that stuff too. And if I just want a straight ahead tactics game, for the last few years, I just go play Into the Breach. But now I like that I have this now that I can throw in the rotation of, if I don't want any fluff and I just want to play some tactics and crunch some numbers and look at a grid, then this is like a great choice and something that differentiates it from these other tactics games that I also really love, but they're doing other things along with it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And it's the comparison to Into the Breach is pretty good, right? Because that's another like pick up and play tactic game, right? And that's why this to me feels like a perfect handheld game. And obviously it's going to feel good. It's a Game Boy Advance game, right? So that makes sense. But it's like, I think the older I get, the more I'm looking for games that I can play while I have something on in the background. You know what I mean? It's like Fire Emblem, like even in like the battles, like outside of all the RPG stuff that you're talking about, I feel like there's, support conversations, there's like shit going on, I'm like character motivations or whatever, because I'm playing as the characters, I like want to be more like tuned in to the actual battles and have the music playing and all this kind of stuff. It's like with this game, it's like, this is a great, like, again, this is a great pooping game, right? You know, this is a nice game, although the battles take a little bit longer than a standard poo, but it's like, you know.
What is the exact length of a standard poo?
Well, it varies for people. Okay. For me, I like to sit there a while. Okay. But anyway, we don't need to get into that, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, I can like listen to a podcast and play this game and like, and not feel like I'm like losing that much. Right. And I like that it's just more like to the point. And you know, I don't know. I think that's, and to me, it's like the fantasy stuff in Fire Emblem, like I can kind of take or leave, you know. I think like this speaks a little bit more to like what I was into when I was a kid, you know what I mean? Kind of the cartoony, like toy soldier stuff, rather than like swords and sorcery sort of things that you know, I like, you know, there's a lot of stuff like that I like, but I'm just more plugged into something that's a little bit more modern, you know?
Right. What I think I neglected to say in my thing was that what I have realized is that this is probably not a game that's for me. And that I've also realized that this is a good game. Right. And that those things aren't like, the older you get, right, like the more you can separate those two things out. Cause I'm like, it's really polished. And for people who like strategy games and war strategy games and that sort of stuff, I can see. And I kind of am intrigued and want to keep playing it, but I definitely like realize like, I just know that strategy games aren't for me because I'm terrible at them and I want to brute force them. And the only ones that have ever
you beat Fire Emblem Engage. What do you mean they're
on
not
like
for
the
you?
easiest settings and like, and it's like the only strategy games that have worked for me are Fire Emblem, the two most recent ones, and the Mario Rabbids ones. And I think that's because I love Mario characters and I've fallen in love with Fire Emblem characters and all the trappings that y'all are saying this game doesn't have. You know what I mean?
I will say this, and I don't want to keep bringing up Wargroove, but if you want to get into the tactics of this, but you want fantasy, boy, do I got a game for you. Wargroove is fantastic. So that's maybe a good in between there. I interestingly, like when we first we're seeing trailers of this, I didn't really love the aesthetic, and I think part of it is just I love the GBA so much. I love the pixel art and the colors and all that stuff. It's a very special era for games in my mind and all that stuff. And so seeing the art style here, I wasn't digging it, but now, you know, seeing more and more trailers and then actually finally playing the game, and to your point, David, like whether it's on the TV or handheld, I've like really grown attached to the aesthetic here because it definitely has that army war aesthetic, which I don't particularly care for, but it's like, how could they take that and then make it as Nintendo as possible? And it's so shiny and squeaky and goofy. And it reminds me of like Wii tanks, you know, like we play tanks, like that game mode and all that stuff. So it's working for me. And then I feel like they've went the extra mile, like all the different, they very easily could have taken all the different, you know, countries, whatever they're called in this game, and like just made them palette swaps of each other. Here's red, green, blue, whatever. But like, no, they've actually made like different models for every, you know, country has a different tank model. And then when you go into some of the battles, there's like sometimes a farm in the background with like little cows and stuff like there's a lot of detail, and I find it quite charming now that I'm actually playing the game. And I'm kind of surprised how I've 180'd on liking the aesthetics, which I wasn't really into from the trailers.
Well, and I kind of feel the same way. It's like almost a bit like, it's like if these games were on NSO, like Advance Wars and Black Hole Rising, if they were on NSO, I wouldn't buy this game, I think, because it's like, because the original aesthetic works so well. It's a really similar, there's not much really added that's super meaningful here. You know, obviously online is big, but I mean, you could play games online on NSO as well, right? But it's like, either way, it's like, I think that it almost feels to me like they made the art style like this to differentiate it from Wargroove, you know, because Wargroove really took the GBA aesthetic and just made it modern and widescreen, right? Like I feel like Wargroove looks a lot more like the GBA Advance Wars than Advance Wars does for the Switch now, right? It's almost more like a convenience thing to pick it up at this point, like on the Switch. But it's like the original games like hold up really, really well, especially graphically, like you're talking about, like, and it really, you know, used every little bit of the GBA's graphics to make that game look really gorgeous when they originally came out. But yeah, no, I've come around to it too. I love looking in the background. It's like, I love like when you're kind of close to cities, you can see the cities in the background. You know what I mean? And then when you're in the cities, it's kind of like a whole different setup. Way Forward, man. They're really good developers. That was a good pick for this game for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of talking about it, so maybe we can just talk about the aesthetics like in more detail. It looks great, and I think the more I play it, the more I am. It's like the more comfortable I'm getting with it. Like it's like all of y'all both said, right? Like initial feelings are kind of ebbing as the more I play it. I don't know what do y'all think about like the music? I'm kind of my gut instinct is the music's a little repetitive and not that great. I
think it's good, but it's like it's kind of hokey, right? like I like hearing the songs for the first time, but then like 30 minutes into a battle, I'm like, oh, I'll turn the music off.
I'm always thankful when you get to do like commanding officer attacks that changes the music a little bit or whatever.
I'll say this about the sound design. This game does do the thing that I hate with voice acting, which is like they just say like part of the line, or they're just like, or they'll say something from like the second half of the line that you're reading. It's like either just record all the dialogue or don't do any, but for me, that kind of like middle ground where someone's just like, ugh, and then it's like the rest of the line.
It's not even
out.
The middle ground where it's just a grunt, right? Because it's exactly what you said. Like a middle ground with a grunt feels a little better to me than this.
Yeah. Yes. This is like they'll say, like in JRPG or in RPGs, like, well, they'll like you pick something to say and then your character says something different. It's like that in this, where it's like they say something that's about what's written on the screen, but it's not exact. And then my brain is like, just say the thing.
And I know why this happens, right? Like, I mean, it's a development thing, text gets written, voice acting gets recorded, and then they're like, oh, either we can't afford all of it or we need to change it. Like, but it definitely feels really bad in this game. Maybe as bad as it gets. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe there's worse examples, but like in terms of a big game, because
I don't know if I've just seen that so much now that I'm like used to it at this point, but I also fear for me, it was like half an hour in and I'm like, I could not care less about this story. I'm going to be skipping every piece of dialogue. So me hearing only the first word is like, I'm hearing all the dialogue. That's all I need anyway. And now I'm just holding plus and skipping most of it, to be honest. Cause I'm just completely checked out on what these characters are actually saying. So maybe I should dip into some of that, but once again, that percentage of like 95% battle, I want to get that to 100 at this point. Doing whatever I can.
Which I think is the weakness of this game, unless that's what you want, but it is like weird. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
I think they just have like a lot of really good voice actors in this, right? Like really like storied voice actors, like the person voicing Nell is the voice of Shantae and Risky Boots. Max is voiced by Aaron Hansen from Game Grumps, who's done a bunch of voice acting as well as a very seasoned voice actor in his own right. I've never known how to pronounce this dude's name. Pro ZD. He's like a YouTuber. Another voice, he voices Eagle and Flack in the game, and he's a great voice actor as well. And so it's like they've got a great cast in here. I just kind of wish they had done all the dialogue. I mean, I think that's something that Fire Emblem does now. They just record everything, right? And I think or not everything maybe, but like I know like just Three Houses had so much.
That's where the problem is, right? Like there's in most games, even with lots of voice acting, there's something that's not voice acted, right? Maybe not every game, but like, and it's the ambient dialogue or whatever it is, right? But in this game, it's very wishy-washy like when it's gonna happen.
But either way, I have no complaints about the voice acting. Like the voice acting is good. I just wish there was more. I just wish they had recorded all the dialogue personally.
Have either of you played this in handheld?
Yeah.
I've only played it docked, but I've heard some people complain about the text size, and I definitely can tell, even when docked, that there's like a lot of real estate and the text size is pretty small. But it hasn't stood out to me playing docked, but I know that there's been complaints about that. I've seen at least. So
not been a problem for me. I wear glasses.
Me neither.
But,
even though I'm skipping a lot of text, I still when I did need to read stuff, I didn't have any troubles with that. So.
Yeah. This game really pops on the OLED as well.
That brings up a good point though, that I think I really have two main complaints with this, and one of them being enemy AI. Maybe we can talk about that later. But the other one is just quality of life things. I feel like this game is lacking so much of that. The fact that there is not a proper options or settings menu is crazy. I can't think of the last time I've seen a game that doesn't have just straight up an options selection on the main menu of the game, right? Like when you're actually in a battle, there's one page with like 4 settings and you can change some like very basic stuff. But even that is missing a ton of things that I would like. And so obviously something like text size, that should be in every AAA game. If you're asking $80 for a remake of these GBA games, you should have text size be a selector in there for your handheld device. That should be a basic thing. But there's other things missing too. Like you can change the battle animations, turn those off, but then you can never turn off the CO like little
I'm
animation.
always mashing a button.
Oh my god, it's so frustrating.
It's
like
super short, but you can't skip them.
It adds up,
I don't care. I think they're gorgeous. I love the 2D.
But if you're in a longer battle, do I need to see the enemy's same animation 5 times over the course of one battle? Like I'd love to turn it off at that point. You know, like I think some
it's
games
good to have the
that
option.
big animation for the first time. You have to see it. Like I think even Fire Emblem Engage kind of did that too, right? The first time you do that transformation, but then every other time in that same battle, it's like, oh, you don't need to see that again here. So that I mean, there's a list of other things I could mention, but I feel like that to me was a big thing I noticed is just the lack of settings and options, which is a very Nintendo thing. So I
it's
guess
a Nintendo thing. Yeah, it's definitely that frustrates me with a lot of Nintendo games.
It is just very weird that you can't skip or speed along the commanding officer boosts or whatever they're called, power attack things. Because
I don't know. It takes like 5 seconds.
Exactly. It takes 5 seconds, but every time it happens, I'm like, I've seen him freeze this map 5 times, and I know it's going to happen.
Well, let Olaf have his day.
Yeah, he gets his day for sure.
Blizzard.
Okay, well, we've been a little bit negative. What can we be positive about? The gameplay? Do we, dig more into that?
I mean, the gameplay is fantastic. I think, David, you mentioned that this reminds you a lot of chess, which is not something I had thought of, but that actually is a great comparison. I think a big reason for that is there's kind of just element of like trading units, which is a big thing in chess, which is not something you really get in Fire Emblem unless you really hate a character and want them to die, and then you send them in. Which is
you're trying to keep all your people alive. Like I'm purposefully sending people to their deaths way more in this game than any other strategy game. Yeah.
And using characters as bait in not because they're a tank, but just because they're gonna delay stuff by turn. Like that's really interesting. I love that there are. Except for most maps, there's 2 win conditions, whether that's just taking out all the enemies or, the expedited route of claiming the HQ. And sometimes I feel like they make it too obvious that you should just go for the HQ and skip all the enemies because it's a bit of a cheesy way to win. But then other maps, I find that's a very compelling choice of like, man, this HQ is so far behind enemy lines. Like, am I going to have to just take everyone out anyway? But then sometimes they'll throw like, okay, you got to defend for a few turns instead. Or ones that I've really enjoyed are where you have to, it's like a battle of like who can get to 15 properties first. And those are really fun. And the push and pull, and those truly feel like an actual war where you're fighting on these different fronts back and forth, pushing each other in and out. So I think that adds a lot of good variety there too for the tactics, is just having different win conditions. Most games it's pretty like defeat the boss and then or defeat every enemy. But this game does something quite different just because of how it's set up.
Yeah.
And for a war simulator, like you kind of just touched on, Dylan, it does kind of feel appropriate that, right? Like your infantry are fodder. And sometimes I'm like, I'm just going to move some infantry and hope they attack them so I can sneak my tanks up or whatever. You know what I mean? And
it's
like,
totally.
That feels like a real war move. Like as terrible as that is.
Right. Yeah. Patrick's ethics are getting the better of him as he's playing this game. It's pretty clear to see, but I agree. I think that makes the game a lot more fun. I think one of the best kind of mechanics in this game too is capturing cities, right? Another thing that kind of feels like chess, like kind of making a pawn go up to the end of the chessboard and becoming a queen. It's kind of like a war of attrition, right? In order to get there. It's the same thing with capturing cities, right? You really have to like plan that in advance. And then if your units get injured, they do less damage and it takes them longer to capture cities, which is really frustrating as you're learning the game, right? But then, once you kind of get that down, that's where a lot of the strategy comes into play, right? Okay, like let's have my fodder go out and get hurt, and then have the second row kind of like move up and actually capture the cities with 10 HP or whatever, and actually be able to do this stuff. And even it's like, in Fire Emblem, if you get hurt, you're still doing the same amount of damage, right? But this is like, one of your units is, it's like 10 guys. That's what you have to think of it as, right? And if you have less guys, you're going to be doing less damage, and so you really have to plan ahead. And that's something I really enjoy about this game quite a bit.
Yeah, and then like combining units is such an interesting mechanic as well. And then you know, Patrick, I think you mentioned earlier, like, you know, fuel and ammo is a thing, which of course, you know, weapon has like, or Fire Emblem has weapon durability and stuff, but this feels very different. And the fuel in particular, like, I've lost so many submarines because I just run out of fuel, and that's an interesting resource to kind of have to play with in a game like this. I like that little layer on top of the strategy too, which for the most part, like 90% of the maps, not something you really need to think about. But sometimes you do, and it makes the maps even more dire.
Yeah, and it gives you a reason to have your like APCs or whatever go out and refuel guys, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of my favorite things to do is just like load my troops up into APCs and then move them out to cities as quickly as I possibly can. And then I always like forget, and then, you know, I've just got like an APC full of guys, and then they just get destroyed. I'm like, oh god damn it, I should have dropped them off a long time ago. Yeah, it's fun.
And I think it's been frustrating for me at first, but I think once you get it, it's nice, is that there are a lot of variety of units, right? And sometimes some of them look similar at first. Like I can definitely see how they stand out and are different, but at first I'm a little bit like, why can't I attack from here to here? And that's been hard, but once you get it, I think it's cool that there are different units with different abilities, and so many of them early on. That sort of thing.
The stuff that breaks my brain is that some units can move and then attack, and then some units, I have a hard time with that. They have to already be in position before they can attack during that turn, right? And that kind of fucks my brain up a little bit. I'm still kind of grasping that as I'm relearning this game again.
Yeah, which I think is a fine thing, but at first it is a little tricky to be like, why can't I attack with this?
No, but it's great. Again, it's bringing it back to that chess thing. It's like,
right.
It's setting up your positioning and then making your attacks. You just got to think like 3 turns ahead, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
There's the COs too. I find is interesting the way that changes things up, because they have their ability, of course, and that's usually just like, okay, for one turn you're super powered up or you heal, whatever it is. But also the fact that it like changes like the stats of your units, and particularly Max, who just has like worse range on all his stuff. And then, you know, I think you can unlock Grit later, and he has like extra range and things like this. And that just totally changes how you're going to play with these maps. One criticism there then is that you can't like preview what the map actually looks like before you pick who your CO is. So you can't like choose who would be strategically. You'd have to go into the map, look at it, quit out,
fail,
abandon the game, load. So once again, not too nice in that way, but I really like that changes it up, and I feel like that would add even just some replayability on some of these harder maps. Of just, man, I'd like to try it with like potentially the worst character and see if I can figure out a strategy that would work for me.
Yeah, totally. What do we think about the value of this? I know you were saying earlier that it's an $80 game. That's Canadian dollars, I have to say for the listeners. But $60 here in the States. But what do we think about that? I mean, like, you know, these are really pretty faithful ports of GBA games being sold at retail price. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, I feel like this is a really good value. You know, like I think they put a lot of work into this game. It's clear that this wasn't some kind of like quick rush job, and there's a lot of value here, especially if you take into what am I trying to say?
Account.
Especially if you take into account all the online, right? And being able to make your own maps and stuff like that. I haven't played too much of that yet.
Yeah,
but,
it's pretty limited, I gotta say. Like,
it's just
even
friends,
for Nintendo
right?
even for Nintendo standards with online, I feel like this is a pretty lazy effort in terms of the online front.
That's unfortunate. What about the like stage builders? Have you built any maps?
I did build one map, and I was messing around with it, and it's pretty fun. You can change the scale of it, so you can make pretty huge maps and all that. And that seems pretty solid. It seems like you have everything from the first game. I've jumped into Advance Wars 2 as well, and I'm checking out, and there's already like a couple new units in there and some other kind of buildings. And so none of those are available in the builder, but I don't know if it's something you have to unlock by, say, beating the campaign, or I even checked after I was a few missions in and didn't seem to unlock yet. So I think I'd have to report back on that in terms of getting a bit further in. But it seemed solid enough. But I mean, once again, the biggest critique of this is that you can only get maps from your friends, and you have to be you have to load in at the same time to like share maps with each other. And then I'm not even clear if you can download someone's map. You might just you can play with them, but I don't know if you can download it.
Right.
Sorry, my last Wargroove reference is that game's map builder is insane, and that had full online capabilities. You could even add like cutscenes and stuff, so people would make like RPGs and full campaigns. Whereas this is like you can make an individual map. That's it. You can't share it with anyone online. So it just sucks. It feels like you made a pretty good map builder, but then there's really no way for you to engage with people who are going to make these things. So I guess David or Patrick, if you guys make a map, let me know. I don't know anyone else who has this game, so that's kind of where it stops for me in terms of actually using.
Jay has it in our Discord.
All right, Jay, I'll get you added up, and we'll share a map and play on it once, and then like
we'll share friend codes and then figure out from there what to do.
We'll pick a time. We'll meet in the back alley. Yeah, all this stuff. It's like it's
I know you
can
to
jump through.
I know you could play multiplayer on one system, but I think that would kind of be sort of bad with Fog of War, right? Because the whole point is that you're not meant to be able to see where people are. So if you're playing on like the same TV, wouldn't that kind of get broken a little bit, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you can set Fog of War on a map either. Actually, now that you mention it, maybe it was in the settings, but I don't know if you can even do that on a custom map. But I don't. Yeah, obviously, if you're doing split screen, I don't think you would be doing a Fog of War map.
Right. But either way, I mean, I think going back to the value thing, it's like I think even if that is not as solid of an experience as we would hope it would be, again, a very Nintendo thing. I just think like these two games have a lot of content in them, right? And I think it's going to take me a while to even get through one of these games, let alone both, right? And so for me, I feel like this is a good value and it's a good release from Nintendo, and I'm glad that they remade it, even though maybe it would have been better to put ultimately maybe it would have been better to put Way Forward on something else and just release these games on NSO, right? But either way, if you've never played these games before and you're interested in this kind of stuff, I mean, I think it's probably worth the money.
I think that's where it is, in my opinion, which is like these games feel very specific to me. Or the first one I still have dipped my toe into, but like I don't think this has huge broad appeal, but I think it's very much worth it to somebody who likes, hardcore strategy games with this aesthetic or with war, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's worth it for them. And then if that's not you, then it's probably not worth it. But I think that's good. That's like a clear, like, this isn't made for everyone, and that's okay. Which I think is great. I do wish that these other modes were a little more robust after hearing what you said, Dylan, because I haven't had a chance to check them out, and I wanted to. And I think map making in particular, it's just a bummer because I think map making and sharing maps online and playing maps that people make online is a way for games like this to reach more people, because it's more fun to make your own maps for some people. Like my son watched me play some of this and he was like, can we do the map maker? And I'm like, well, no, I need to play a little bit. He's like, that's the only thing I'm interested in. I'm out. You know what I mean? Like, and I think just, that would make it a more long lasting, robust community type thing. And that sucks.
It's got more content than Battle Tanks from Clubhouse Games 51 Worldwide Classics,
which we do play a lot of, actually.
Yeah. Same aesthetic though.
It is a very similar aesthetic. But I think it's a good value for what it is so far, at least based on my impressions. Especially it's like that with that caveat that like, if going into it what it is and that appeals to you, I think you're going to enjoy it and it's worth the money.
Yeah, the value is there for me too, even with those complaints I mentioned, just because the campaign is like enough content for me. I wish those other modes were better, but the campaign is very solid. It seems like, based on what percentage I'm at on completion, I have a lot to go for both these games, obviously. So I think it's definitely there. And like Fire Emblem is getting more and more popular by the entry at this point, and this is like a great time for this to come out in a way too, for people who are fans of that and want to try other tactics games that are Nintendo things. This is a good way to do it. It would still be nice if they put them on the Game Boy Advance, Nintendo Switch Online. It would be cool to go back and see those, or maybe even just put one on there so people could see it if they like it, pick up this remake, or even like put Game Boy Wars on there or something. People can try that, and then actually pay to check out the full like Advance Wars 1+2 reboot camp thing of it. But yeah, I think the value is there for me, but I once again, back at the top, I'm a huge tactics fan, so obviously I'll eat up anything in the genre, and it's worth it for me. But yeah, if you want Wargroove, it's like $20 or something.
With a lot of free DLC and everything too, right?
I am not, a sponsor for Wargroove. It feels really relevant here today.
Well, I haven't, maybe David and Dylan, maybe you both know this, but maybe not. Like, what's the difference between the two games? Are there, I know the second game I've heard is a little better. Maybe it has some quality of life stuff, or maybe just more units and more interesting. Is that true from your experience playing it, Dylan, or from your memory, David?
Yeah, I essentially got to, I think, mission 16 in Advance Wars 1. Once again, I was sick this weekend, so I was just going ham playing through this thing. And that's where I finally hit a brick wall. And I failed that mission twice, and I was like, oh man, this is very difficult, and I don't even know what I'm going to do now. Like, I don't have another idea of how I'm going to beat this map. And I kind of, before this episode, I wanted to jump in. Let's see what's going on with the second one, just to get the vibe for it. And so I went and completed a few chapters there. And it seems like there's a fair few differences. And some of these things might be slight spoilers for people. But there's at one point in the second game, I found this secret lab location, and I went to this other hidden battle, and then I completed this battle and unlocked a new unit. And now I can buy that at the whatever the place where you buy units is.
Right.
And so that seems like once again, I've done 60 missions the first game, didn't encounter anything like that. So I feel like that's an addition to the second game, and that's pretty cool. And I think there's probably more of that. And then the CO power, there's a second version of it. You can charge it up and get a second version of it. And then there's other types of buildings that the enemy has that actually do change up the game in a pretty significant way, I would say. So even just from those first few chapters in the second game, I feel like they really do crank it up. And even just the way they throw tactics battles at you. I feel like so far in the first game, there hasn't been a level where they give you 0 units at the start and you build up your army from scratch. But already in the second game, they've had a couple levels like that. And that's pretty interesting of okay, I got to make my composition here from the ground up. It's not giving me here's your 4 or 5 starting units, build around that. It's just a completely empty map and you have 2 buildings.
Tabula rasa.
And that's really cool. And so once again, maybe the first game does that at some point, but I hadn't encountered it in the first whatever percentage, mission 16 is. So yeah, it seems like there's a fair few differences. And once again, I hope that stuff is brought into the level editor when you're said and done with all those new features.
Yeah. Yeah, I never played Black Hole Rising when I was a kid. I only played the first one. So I can't really speak to that. But I mean, even if it's just more of the same, I mean, it's just more game. You know what I mean? That's why these are released as one game, right? It's just and as I understand it, continues the story from the first game as well, the campaigns as well. So it's definitely, even if it is more of the same, I think that's fine. If you're just enjoying it, it just kind of makes it feel a bit more robust and modern. And I think together you've got about 40-50 hours of gameplay between the two games in this package. So
that's pretty good. Yeah. And I noticed too, on the auxiliary battles that you can do outside the campaign, you can switch between versions. So you can play it as Advance Wars 1 or 2. And obviously it looks the exact same for the sake of this remake, and I don't know if tanks do different damage to infantry or whatever. I don't know if it gets down that level, but it's at least the COs seem to change based on which version you're playing. So even that adds some variety too, in terms of all these maps you can unlock and buy in the gallery. They can, be played in these different versions, and there's different balance and maybe different units you have access to in the second one, stuff like that.
Is that mode okay? That's the war room mode. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I have not actually done any of those yet. But I've seen, at least in the shop, there is a ton of extra maps you can buy. So it seems like there's a lot going on. And some of those maps are freaking huge. So I'm excited to check them out. But I feel like it's kind of I'm going to get through the campaigns first. And then if I want more Advance Wars going on,
right, and
that would be the place to go.
The challenge mode, essentially, right? Where you can do it for high school.
That's the stuff you poop during.
Yeah. Not that the story is rich in the rest of it, but yeah. What else about this game as we come to a close on discussing it, what else should we mention?
I think before we end, I just want to give a shout out to the animated cutscenes. I think at least the intro and the way that it's animated, in the 2D style is just beautiful. Right. I think that's probably one of the best additions to the game. And just really happy with how they handled the character design. It really feels like the cover of the Game Boy Advance game, like the box art, come to life, right? Which is really, really cool to see. Obviously Way Forward has a lot of really talented animators. The Shantae games have gotten a lot more animated as they've gone on, with a lot of 2D animation included as well. And so, yeah, that was a great pick for that. And, I love me some 2D animation. So it's really nice to see that stuff in this game. I want to give that some lip service.
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree.
Anything else?
No, I mean, I once again, like, there's a couple things I would love to see them patch in or something, but I don't think it's going to happen. But like, one thing that I'm so used to now from Fire Emblem has been doing it for years, is to be able to like select a unit and see what their attack range is, and like the fact that you can't do that in here feels like, what's going on? Like, that's a really easy thing.
I mean, you can press B, right?
But it doesn't.
You can hold it on an individual one, but there's not like a button to like, okay,
see
here's what
everybody.
everyone's
Oh,
range
just
is,
see across
or like
the map.
hold a selection.
Yeah.
So there's little
Totally.
things like that, and
Right, because I watched
yeah.
you, David, do the thing that we were all doing in this game, which
The
is
back
you
and
go
forth,
to
the
it,
back and forth.
and you go to your unit,
Yeah.
and you're like, wait a minute, and you go back to it, and you're like, okay, wait,
Yeah.
is this the safe spot? And that would be nice.
It'd be nice to be able to put little markers, right? Like
Yeah,
where
toggle it
you want to
on
put your
permanently,
units or
kind of.
whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, look, they finished developing this game probably
Right.
2 years ago. Let's get real, right? Like, there's no way that they're going to be patching this game. Like, Way Forward has probably moved on from this game. I don't even know if they have any teams around.
Like,
Yeah,
Probably don't
so
even have the
bug
code
fixes.
anymore.
you
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that they probably will do something to fix bugs that if players find them, right? But you also think that this game has sat for so long that they might have already kind of spent extra time in doing that. And
That's what I think. Yeah.
I don't think this
Yeah.
game is big enough that player feedback's going to push any patches. But we'll see.
Mm.
You can hope.
I'd like to, I'm curious what the sales are going to be like on this game, because it can't be great. You know what I mean? I don't think anybody thought it was ever going to be a huge hit. But then, especially with the delay and everything like that, and it hasn't been marketed like a ton, it's almost kind of like they're trying to just like get it out.
Yeah,
the door,
and,
and so I hope
3 weeks
that we get
before Tears of the
Right.
Kingdom. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. As the timing is not a fluke, right?
Mhm.
I think that I'd be interested to see what the sales are like, and I think there's definitely, it'd be nice to see Way Forward just get their own game. You know what I mean? Not just do a remake, like a sequel to this. Maybe with a little bit different graphical style, a little bit more modern feeling. It'd be interesting to see what they could do with a new game in this series, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Is that what you would want instead of intelligent systems going back to this to make like a new entry? Because they made this game, right? And they made Famicom Wars and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Intelligent, so Fire Emblem developer, but you'd prefer if Way Forward was maybe the one to move it forward. And
I don't know.
keep
I
going with
just,
the series?
it's like Fire Emblem's world now, and we're all just kind of living in it, right? Like Fire Emblem is now more popular than it's ever been. So I don't think intelligent systems would even want to necessarily, right? I mean, so we'd have to see, but I think, I think it's nice. I think it would be really nice to let Way Forward have a crack at it, right? And see how they can do as far as level design and game design is concerned, not just putting a fresh coat of paint on it,
All right, then. Well, I think that does it for our talk on Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. If you're out there playing the game and you have any comment on anything we said, we'd love to hear from you. Anything that we got wrong or just your opinion, please do share it with us. And with that, we're going to take another short break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the other games that we've been playing recently. I'll go first. I think I've really only played Splatoon and Animal Crossing since last episode. I think I mentioned last episode, my son got really back into Animal Crossing, and so that's been actually kind of fun to play him grind out a new island, and he has 0 patience, so it's kind of fun because it's I can just be let's all play on the other Switch and we'll get you all the things you need for that, though some stuff is time locked and you just can't do it. But we've been trying to fast track a new island in Animal Crossing New Horizons, so that's been fun. Played a few bits of Splatoon as always. I'm trying to think if I've been playing anything else. Oh, he and I have played some Super Mario Bros. 3 while he was sick, because we've been playing through that together. We'd started it a few weeks ago, and when we were looking for something to do, we did that. We actually tried a few different games that just when he was sick, but when he was like super sick and we had nothing to do, he was on the couch and throwing up every once in a while. We tried a bunch of games and none of them really stuck because I was like, we need something to do here, you know?
Yeah.
I think
Does Super Mario Bros. 3 stand up for a young kid like him in today's age? Is that still?
You got the
still
rewind
hit?
feature, Dylan.
Oh yeah, it's different than. And
Every
you
time he
save
takes a
unlike the
hit,
NES.
You can save wherever you want. You can
that helps.
You can take a hit and go right back and try again. So that part of it makes it stand up. I think if those things were not there, we'd be out. Like, you know what I mean? Like he would be like, this is not fun, or he would want to watch me play it maybe just because it's Mario. But like with those, you know, I mean, it's, you know, interestingly, something that's kind of frustrating that I do want to mention is we've been playing, because we started it on this, the Super Nintendo All-Stars Collection version of it, where you can actually play with two controllers. But because, like, you know, on the NES, if you're playing it on the NES app or whatever, there's only one controller and you hand it back and forth. But if you have the second controller like I do and you're playing as Luigi, you can't rewind. The rewind feature is only for the player one controller. So every time I die, we move on. But every time he takes a hit, we stick around. But it actually kind of works out to be a little more fair because I beat 75% of the levels. You know what I mean? And
because you're like a pro gamer.
Well, and I've played, this is one of the Mario games I've played so much. You know what I mean? Like, and the levels are short, right? Like, I mean, in Super Mario Bros. 3, but then like it just, so it kind of actually evens it out. Though sometimes I'm like, give me a rewind. You know what I mean? Like, I want another shot at that one.
Anyway. That's me when I play Game Boy Tetris. I'm like, ooh, I can rewind Tetris now. Very good.
Get a high score.
Luigi's always getting this short end of the stick, isn't he? That's just another way that he's the eternal understudy.
Yeah. Well, very good. What have I been playing recently? Speaking of Tetris, there was a Tetris Maximus Cup in Tetris 99. So I played a little bit of Tetris 99 this past week. Unlocked that Kirby Return to Dreamland skin. Like I said, I've been playing a lot of Picross, both on my Switch and in a little book with a pencil. I love me some Picross. Been getting way back into that recently. Let's see. I picked up the Halo Master Chief Collection for the Steam Deck. It's really cool to have those games portably. So I've been playing some of the campaigns on that, and they finally fixed the multiplayer. For a while, the like anti-cheat on Steam Deck was not. Basically didn't allow for Steam Deck players to play online, and now they can, which is awesome. They patched it, and it's great to play Halo online with gyro. Super fun. I love me some Halo. It's been a while since I played these games, so I'm kind of getting back into it a little bit. Been doing a little bit of the Halo 2 campaign on my Steam Deck, but I like don't ever want to play any first person shooter ever again without gyro controls, you know? And so that's been really fun. It was on sale. I think it even might still be on sale right now, but that. And then also did, like I said last week, I picked up the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters, and I've been playing a bit of Final Fantasy VI, and that game is awesome. That's a game I've started many times and never actually got through. And I'll say the Pixel remasters are excellent. And I've got those on my Switch, and looks really great on the OLED. Plays really well. There's lots of quality of life improvements. So yeah, this definitely feels like the best way for anyone to play this game. I know it's missing some of like the extra dungeons that were in like the Game Boy Advance version and stuff like that, but I never played that version, so I would never know if someone hadn't told me that. But yeah, that's mainly what I've been playing recently. I'm kind of just like counting down the days until Tears of the Kingdom comes out, you know. So I'm kind of just playing random shit in the meantime.
Yeah, it's hard to like want to start something meaty right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited for Firmament as well. Cyan's new game, the creators of Myst. They've got a game coming out like 6 days after Tears of the Kingdom, which is really unfortunate timing. But man, I'm fucking pumped for that. I just actually requested a review code. Hopefully they'll send me one because I'm planning on streaming it and stuff like that. But that'll come in a little bit, and maybe we'll be hearing more about that on the podcast. So stay tuned. What about you, Dylan? What have you been playing recently other than Advance Wars?
Yeah, so after hot off the Mario movie, me and my partner been pretty hyped on Mario and stuff, and I think the main one we've been sticking through is Mario Galaxy, and I think we're almost done. We're getting every star before we move on from the different areas, but I've never like truly played through that whole thing. I picked it up with the 3D All Stars collection, and yeah, finally like really going through and playing through the whole thing. So that's been really fun. And then
amazing
my other
game.
Oh, yeah. It's so good. It's so different. Like I thought the worlds would be more open than they are, but it's like truly quite a linear game, but just the levels are so well designed and so creative and so weird that I'm really digging it. So of course that's an all-time great. And then 2 picks here. I feel like I'm sucking up to the teacher here because I have 2 very David picks. One is I too have been playing some Picross lately.
Let's go.
I've been playing some Picross 3D round 2.
Yes, dude, that game rules.
It's so good. When the 3DS store was going down, I panic bought a bunch of things just like you did, David. And one of those was Picross 3D. And yeah, that's just great because it's I have a couple Picross games on the Switch. I don't need all of them, including 9. I don't go through them as quickly as you do, so I still have puzzles to do in the ones that I do own. But 3D is obviously a whole different ball game there, and so that's really fun. It's just super hard again in terms of some of the new mechanics, and this obviously different dimension of it makes it pretty tricky. So
it's got a different feel too. Like I feel like Picross, like standard Picross, is like filling in blocks to make the picture, where Picross 3D really feels like you're chiseling away at a giant block to get the thing underneath. It's kind of got a different vibe, but similar mechanics, right? So cool. I'm glad you've been enjoying that as well. I've been really enjoying that game.
Yeah, and like they know it feels good because they put so much of those 0 blocks, which are just there for you to knock away, and so they know that feels good. Or you hit the bomb, and then they all just chisel away. It's
so satisfying.
It's great stuff. And then the other is you guys did your Castlevania episode a few weeks ago, and that got me like really just wanted to play some Castlevania. And then pretty much right after that episode, the 2 collections on the Switch went on sale for like pretty steep sale. So I picked up both of those, and I've been starting out with the Advance collection because once again, big Game Boy Advance guy over here. And so I've started with Circle of the Moon, I think is the name of that one. It's the first one I've been playing there. Never played that game back in the day. Had a couple of the other GBA Castlevanias, but yeah, never played this one before. So that's been a really good time. And, I think it's been so long since I've played a Castlevania thing that I've, in my mind, and everyone's saying Metroidvania over the years, I've kind of more connected how close Metroid and Castlevania those experiences are. But they're actually like just still very, very different in terms of that game is so wide open very early on instead of Metroid, which is like usually somewhat linear until like the end of the game. So that's been really fun to go through.
And the card mechanic in Circle of the Moon is really cool too, because there's all these different combinations of abilities. It's like it's almost like mind-boggling, like how much shit you can combine to make different weapons and stuff like that in that game.
Right.
It's really awesome. I think that's a really underrated Castlevania game for sure.
I've really only scratched the surface of that card mechanic. I don't even know how it works yet, in like a good way. Like it's mysterious, and I'm curious to get more cards and see these combinations. So that's been pretty cool. And then my other takeaway playing that is that once again, Smash and how accurate they make those movesets to the characters that the games come from. Like just down to the jump animation of the character and the exact way he throws the chain out. I'm such a Smash Ultimate fan. Just to see how accurate those movesets are and how they just rip moves out of these old games is always so impressive. And so for somebody who's not a diehard Castlevania fan to go back and play that again after Smash Ultimate is like, man, Sakurai, that team is so impressive in how accurate these movesets are. It's super cool to see.
Totally. Yo, real quick before we move on, I know you also played the beta for Monochrome Heights, Patrick's game. I feel like we're both Spelunky players, right? So we really like tight platforming and stuff like that. What were some of your takeaways from that game? Because I really, really enjoyed playing Patrick's game. Not to just suck your dick on the podcast too much, Patrick, but
no, let's suck it, man. I'm sure loved it. I loved it. It was a great time. I pretty much what you said, David, last week of like, Patrick's thanking you for doing this and giving him feedback. And I'm like, no, thank you for giving me this, just hand delivering this free cool game to my email, and I can just play this thing and check it out. So I had a very great time playing through it. I feel like when it comes out officially, David, we have to do a race or something like that.
Yes, I would love to do that. Yeah,
to do a competition or who can get through with the least amount of deaths or something like that. But no, I really enjoyed it. I had a really great time, and man, there's so much in there. There's so many different types of obstacles, and the feel of it. The music's great too. Oh my god, that soundtrack's fantastic. So I just had a great time. It's really fantastic.
Hell yeah!
Thank you, Dylan. Honestly, it's so great to have a few people who are the target audience that can give me feedback. And then I was telling Dylan this a while ago, but I got a third person who is very much the target audience to play it and to see what all of three of y'all have said, and has been really helpful.
The stuff
you know what
that
I mean?
overlaps.
Yeah, the overlap, because it's very clear what the easy fixes are. You know what I mean? To take this to hopefully a better level. And it's so helpful to get y'all's feedback, and I appreciate it.
Hell yeah! Well, come on, Patrick, let's get it done. Make 30 more levels. Come on, we're hungry.
I'm working on it.
I'm fucking with you. Take as much time as you need. We've got more than enough shit coming out over the course of this month. Yeah. But anyway, very good.
Just shadow drops it on the same day of Tears of the Kingdom. Sorry, I'll get to your game eventually, Patrick.
I wish I could be done that soon. But thanks for bringing that up, and both of y'all for your feedback and for playing it.
Of course.
Appreciate it. Well, I think that does it then for this episode on Advance Wars. Thanks, Dylan, so much for coming on. I'm so glad that you could do this and come talk to us.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. We're gonna get you to that 10th episode. We're gonna get you to heaven. Yeah.
I'm dying. I'm going to 9. I'm 9 lives in this. I'm like the cat from Cats Aqualico, whatever that game is.
Thanks to MilkyWay.co for doing our website. Thanks to Corduroy for doing our awesome music. If you're looking for me, Patrick Online, you can find me most places as PDYX.
I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, Dylan? Where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Dylan Muss, DYLANMUSS, or I'm in the Discord at Rapatika, or if you want other video game podcasts, because there's not enough of those, Geekverse is my podcast where we did a review for Beau is Afraid, shout out to that movie. But then good. I specifically host Geekverse Side Quest, which is the weekly video game show. So you can go check that out if you want to hear more video game thoughts. Cover, a fair amount of Nintendo stuff. Did a ranking of every Mario game I've ever played recently, so that might be irrelevant for the Switch Headz audience. But yeah, go check that out if you want. After you've caught up on all your Switch Headz episodes, of course.
If you're listening to this,
you can alternate. Yeah.
No, listen to every 206 whatever it was episode.
That's a lot. Yeah. Oh my god, I'm still waiting for somebody to do an AI version of our podcast. I really want to hear an AI, because there's got to be enough of our voice out there. You could train a robot to be us.
What would it do for the guest spot though? Because you always have a guest. Would it just be a weird amalgam of all these different?
Oh my god! You ever read Animorphs? There's a character in Animorphs who is an alien, but then for his human form he combines all of the Animorphs, like all the people, into one person, and then that's his. It would be like that. Anyway, you can hear more about that on my Animorphs podcast, which will be coming out soon. But anyway, if you'd like to find our show, thank you, Dylan. If you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram and Facebook. We got our website, switchheadz.com. And then, of course, like we said a few times, please join the Discord. We'll have the link to that in the description of this episode. We also have our Facebook group. Both of those are really great communities. We'd love to have you guys join. But in the meantime, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. If you've been enjoying Advance Wars, please drop us a line. Let us know what you think. It was super fun to talk about this. We got another great episode for you next week, so make sure you tune in for that. But in the meantime, gang, you know the drill out there. You guys stay safe. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Let's have the only wars we fight in the future be on little cardboard tables. How about that? But other than that, we love you guys very much. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.